Welcome to Changing the Conversation. This podcast explores the mix of diversity, culture and tech innovations in our industry. Join us as we sit down with trailblazers, thought leaders and innovators who are reshaping the landscape of insurance, bringing you stories that redefine the narrative. We are your guide to the evolving landscape of insurance. This is Changing the Conversation, brought to you by Mackay.
Welcome to Changing the Conversation. I'm delighted to be speaking to Glenn Marshall this morning, and we've got a bit of a twist today as well. At the end of our interview, I'll be introducing a new potential host for the series, my daughter Isabel. Okay, so Glenn, you have a really incredible experience and longevity in the insurance industry. I would love you to talk to me about your background and where you are now and what you're doing.
All right, yeah. I started, I tried to be an electrician, wasn't clever enough, didn't pass the exams, went to a final interview with British Rail and didn't get the job. My mum worked for a Lloyd's members agent and she wrote off to, I probably did 50 interviews with brokers and underwriting agencies in the Lloyd's markets, and finally got a job with a company called Jansen Green, and the syndicate there was run by a legend in the market called Michael Payne. I worked there for 3 years as it was called a box boy, but it was a box assistant role where you just did general administrative duties. Left there after 3 years and went to a company called Bankside with my boss for 30 years, John Murphy. In 1999, that company turned into effectively the QBE. The QBE also owned Jansen Green, so this merged the syndicates that we'd left and then set up at Bankside. My boss didn't get the top job, so we left there and set up an agency called Abacus and Syndicate 2525, which is now run by a fellow called Tony Ive, who has done a fantastic job there. Since we left, we was there for I think 2 or 3 years, and we left and went to Brit in end of 2002, and 10 years at Brit, and it's always been working for John Murphy and underwriting UK and Irish liability business, mainly in the construction sector, and that would be high risk trades, roofing, scaffolding, demolition, waste, that type of business. The reason for that is it's a sector where you're not fishing in a pond with 25 insurers, so your competition is a lot lower. The rates are probably more sustainable, and you do get better rates in the liability arena for that type of business than you would do outside of that arena. So with 10 years at Brit, we left Brit in 2012 and went to Dual, which is owned by Hyperion, and set up a new liability MGA with Aspen Capital. Our first year there, to say the least, wasn't very successful. We had a few claims very early that were quite sizable, so that put us on the back foot. I'm not making excuses, but that put us on the back, made it difficult. We had a book of business from Brit, so we had a renewal book of business, so we were getting support from the brokers, so we didn't have that fear where we wasn't going to write enough business. But we did have a couple of bad claims. Paraplegic after about 4 months, which was very sad. The fella had 2 young kids as well, God. So it was and that obviously is very expensive. So we got 2 more years out of that. The second year was better, and the third year was much better than the previous 2 years. Aspen had a change of exec, and the new exec decided that they didn't want to move forward with it. So we got a year out of Liberty, which was basically Dual's main capacity to provider. And then after a year, they decided they didn't want to provide capital for our book of business. They obviously stayed with Dual, but they didn't want to do what we did. Yeah. So we left there and went to Ardonna and set up a new liability MGA there with Argo paper. And a year after that started, Argo decided that they didn't want to write. We wrote probably more Irish business than UK business then, and that fell out of their appetite. So they didn't renew the binder. And it was at that time where they made John Murphy redundant at Ardonna. So I was left there doing a little bit of runoff on the old binder. And then got made redundant, and thankfully 2 brokers over the following 2 years employed me. One was Miles Smith, which is owned by SRG, owned Miles Smith now. 18 months, they had a binder, funnily enough, with Aspen, so I went in there and underwrote under that binder for about 18 months. Aspen didn't renew that binder, and then CityNet, I went as a broker for CityNet for 6 months whilst doing what I'm doing now.
And what are you doing now?
It's been an ambition. When we were at Brit, 2010, 2011, I did have in my head that I wanted to work for myself or with John Murphy, but running our own MGA. John wasn't that interested, so I spoke to Amlin, Brian Carpenter, and also spoke to Amtrust, Keith Rutter, and got a deal offered by Amlin, but he wanted a certain individual to manage the business because I didn't have that experience, which was correct. But that person wanted the deal that he wanted to run our business was too expensive for us. So we didn't go down that route. And then Amtrust offered us a deal, which we accepted. And then they pulled. I went on holiday. And whilst I was on holiday, they decided that they didn't want to do it.
So you've had a fair amount of challenges.
It's been up and down.
Since 2002.
Yeah.
Just getting your feet under the table and then capacity pulled.
Yeah.
Just getting your feet in capacity pulled. How many times do you... I mean, I love the saying, success is failing one less time than you try.
Yeah, not 3.
But that's what you've done. You've gone, all right, that was shit. Let me go on to the next one. Yeah. How does that impact you?
It mentally, fine. It's fine. Because we had a young family at the time, so you've got that pressure. Are you making the right decision? It is a gamble. My wife is not a gambler. I do have those tendencies, so it wasn't as much of a gamble for me in my head than it was for her. Bearing in mind, was it the right decision to leave Brit at the time, which was a very good place to work, great people, and we had a very good safe job because we were there during the hard market. So you was getting, on average, 5 or 6 times the rates than you're getting today. So you was in a profitable position for a long time, and then obviously, excuse me, as the market starts to turn, you're still writing business at higher than you're writing them at today. So that takes 4 or 5 years to get to where they are now. So it was a safe job and it was a great place to work, but it was working for yourself that was sort of the attraction.
The driver.
Yeah.
Do you think that's something, that driver, do you think it's something you're born with, the entrepreneurial spirit, or do you think it's something that you can acquire through experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say it's probably a bit of both. It is a desire to work for yourself. Everybody always says it's the best thing to do is to work for yourself. It's also the satisfaction if you do make a success, and obviously success is managed or driven by, people think driven by profits, but it's not just that. It's satisfaction in your job, looking at people that work with you, enjoying it and growing and letting them flourish and progress, which is also a self-satisfaction, but it's not just driven by profits and money that you put in your bank account.
I couldn't agree more, having been working for myself, just having that flexibility around being a mother, school holidays. I can work odd hours. I can bring my children to podcasts, and I think it's a great experience for them as well. So I wholeheartedly agree. What do you think was the biggest challenge for you in going from corporate structure to entrepreneurship?
It's probably the safety side of it. Like I say, the Brit probably could have still been there now. They're still writing the business that we wrote there back in our day when we underwrote quite a sizable account now. They're still writing that business, so we probably could have stayed there. But yeah, it's the safety bit, and then obviously the excitement of not having that safety net. You do sort of live by the seat of your pants quite a lot of the time.
Sword.
Yeah. And to be fair, finding a partner that we've got in Irwell Insurance Company, who are based in Manchester, have been brilliant. They've been fantastic, and that sort of safety net is there with how much confidence they've given us, how they've sort of let us row our own boat without interfering too much. They've been fantastic partners.
And how long have you been partnered?
That we set the GEM Underwriting Agency was set up. I set the company up in 2011 with a friend of mine, because we always had the idea that we were going to do a liability professional indemnity combined MGA, which is what the deal we got offered by Amlin and by Amtrust, and obviously it fell over. So Greg decided that it wasn't for him. He was happy to have the safety net. So it was 2011 when we set that company up. So it's probably been since then that it's always been in the back of my mind to do it at some stage. And then we started talking to, I worked, the CEO of Irwell, I worked with at Ardonna. And he left shortly after me and was headhunted by Irwell, who were sort of a smallish insurance company, but they've only ever written legal expenses business. And Giles is a legal expenses expert, so he's brought in to maintain that, grow that, and then also develop the book elsewhere. And he said, I've joined, and when I get my feet under the table, I'll give you a ring. And a year later, he rang me and said, I'm CEO now, shall we have a chat? And then a year after that, we got the binder signed. So it's a long process, and that's the insurance industry. Nothing happens overnight, and tankers turn quicker than anybody in insurance does.
I like that saying. But also, to have gone through so many challenges, to then kind of come out at this stage successfully with the right partners in place. Are you happy you made the leap? Is there anything you'd go back and tell yourself in 2011 that you might do differently?
I'll let you know in a couple of years. At the moment, no, because it is. I really enjoy working with my daughter. We've also got a girl that works with us part-time because she's got a young family that worked with us for a long time at Brit and Ardonna and Jewel. So it's nice that there's only 3 of us at the moment. We've got a consultant sort of works on the road for us to try and drum up some retail brokers and retail business for us. So it's developing, and it's developing slowly. We haven't probably had the support that we thought we would have got from the London wholesale market, which has always been our bread and butter. There has been support, but it hasn't been as much as I thought it would be, which I should probably have learned from before, that's what happens. So we are going to try and drum up more retail business from retail brokers, hopefully. And then as we grow, obviously more staff. And hopefully, I think one of the points is getting the right people at the right age with the right desire, and most importantly for me, that they care with what they do. You have to care about the business. You have to care about the people you work with, and you've got to want to make it a success, because I think that's what drives most people. Absolutely.
Have you got any kind of key takeovers or takeaways, should I say, from the corporate world that you've brought with you to GEM Underwriting, and how you run a business and manage people and things like that?
Well, it is. I've been quite lucky because I've worked, as I say, I worked for John Murphy for over 30 years, and I was sort of within reason left to your own devices. And the way our businesses have always been set up is that we're underwriters, traders, and not just us, other people do it as well, but you're left to do your job. So you don't really have to think about too much other than going to Lloyd's every day, hoping that there's a queue of brokers to show you business, and then you selecting the ones that you want to write. And then you go home in the evening and you haven't got too much baggage in your head from the day's work that you've got. So moving from that, which is quite simple, not sound arrogant, but it's you haven't got any stresses or strains of your yesterday or the day before or the day before that, really. Whereas now you've got all of that and more. And when you've got friends and family working with you, there's a bit more pressure that you've got to make it work.
I hear you on that. So Mackay is a small company. There's 3 of us that are pretty much full time, and then we've got quite a few more that are part time / contractors. But I work with my sister. I work with my best friend, and it's wonderful. Except on the days where you're like, oh my God, how am I going to make this work this month? You've got everybody relying on you, and that pressure can be really intense at the same time as being able to go, do you know what? I'm out because my child needs me. So I need you to do this, 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 and this. And when you've got the right people and the right team, I think it's fabulous, but Christ alive, is it difficult to get there?
Yeah, I 100% agree. It does give you that bit of flexibility. But the only thing, not just from our point of view, being a small, very small team, obviously with COVID and the way people's working life is now, and especially the London insurance industry, I haven't really seen it because I haven't been in Lloyd's for over 10 years. But a lot of people that you speak to, the younger generation, sort of the 25-year-olds to sort of the early 30s, they like working from home. And they seem that they want to do that a lot more. And I'm not sure. I would say it's a tricky balance to get it right where it doesn't affect your business. And even though we're a very small team, Chloe works from home, and I'd prefer it if we were going into an office every day. Not to keep an eye on people, but I just think it's better for everybody else to be together, to work together, so we all know what our plans are, where we want to go and what we want to achieve. And when you're not seeing them, when you're seeing them probably once or speaking to them once or twice a week, it makes it a bit trickier.
Yeah, it really does.
I'd prefer to get up, go to an office, even if it's a local office to where we are, not just in London, but just getting up and getting out and sitting in the office together to have a conversation. We've worked in sizable teams, and I think it's good because of all the banter, because of all the chat, because of people learn. I'd say they'd learn more, learn quicker if you're all in the office, all talking the same language.
I think there's a mental element to it as well. I often feel that I have more energy on days that I've got to be up and out than days 100%. When I'm sitting at my desk podcasting with my pyjamas on, the bottom half. I think there's a real mental element. You've mentioned John a couple of times through the podcast. Who would you say has been the most influential person through your career, and have you got any kind of specific advice that they've given you that you've always carried with you?
I've worked. John Murphy obviously has been the main influence. Obviously, to work with a fella for over 30 years, you're obviously going to get on okay. Like I say, John's management style was always, he'll give you enough rope to hang yourself, and I nearly did that a couple of times. But he was there to sort of pick you up when you'd made a few mistakes that you shouldn't have made. So he was seriously supportive. So John would be the main influence, but the best bit of advice I ever got was from an underwriter in the market called Brian Smith, that plenty of people would know. Brian sadly passed away a couple of years ago from Alzheimer's. Very sad, because he was a brilliant bloke, and simple advice he said to me: stick to what you know. Don't get too big for your boots and think you're a liability underwriter. Don't start going and writing CAR business or property business or professional indemnity business, D&O. Stick to what you know, and he's 100% right. 100%
absolutely.
right. Yeah, and we have done. Whether that's because we've been forced into that or not, I don't know. But that's what you're comfortable with, and that's what I've always been brought up with. So, and it's where your relationships are. So branching out into different lines of business, it would be much more difficult for me because you don't know the people in that market.
And relationships sound like they've been fairly pivotal throughout your career, or the last kind of 20 years of it, particularly when you've had some really great and some really difficult times.
Yeah, it's the core, the brokers that we've dealt with, and those same brokers would be with us today over the last 30 odd years, and it's the same core of 7 or 8 brokers. We've never been really dealt with the corporate brokers, the Aons and the Willises of this world. Even though we were in Lloyd's for a long time, we didn't have those relationships with those type of brokers. So our bread and butter was London wholesale brokers.
Yeah.
We still got a few retail relationships, but it was mainly from a core of eight London wholesale brokers that supplied us with our business. And that was, to be fair, in the hard market, I would say that business that we wrote about 100 million in 2003, that business today is probably 40 odd million for that same book of business, and that was provided by 6 or 7 brokers who are still around today, as I say.
How so one of the things that's sort of been coming faster and faster over the last probably 5-10 years is this technology. aspect of insurance. You guys have partnered with Paracode. How is that changing your approach to underwriting? What does it? Tell me a bit about it.
Paracode they're brilliant. I think they probably set up just before we did, so they were sort of new on the block. I was recommended them by a mutual friend of our chairman. Spoke with the team, liked what they had to offer. The potential for growth and for development is definitely there. That would take us down the road of a rating engine, because probably at the moment it's in my head, and all the decisions that are made are from past experiences and what risks are worth, what they should pay. But at some point, to keep up with everybody else, you've got to obviously grow with them. And I think the next step for us would be a rating engine on the system. Now, whether you pass that out to your broking fraternity, I don't know. It's a decision we'll have to make and think about. But it would help as we grow and we get more staff. I think from a training point of view, that would be massively beneficial and would help them. And it also would satisfy your capital provider, because you would have fixed rates in the system that they know maybe you've got a discount on those rates, but they're happy that you haven't got any, I wouldn't say cowboys is not the right word, because you wouldn't employ them, but you haven't got any people that can go off-piste and do things that they shouldn't be doing. So the control and the regulation and the management of it makes it a lot better, and it satisfies your capital provider with those regulations you've got in place. So that would be the next step from us, from a technology point of view. Where we go with what's happening with digitisation and AI, I don't know.
It's huge, isn't it? Absolutely huge.
The potential for it is scary, because I'm not sure. You read different things, but I'm not sure what effect it has, not just on our industry, but the economy and the country as a whole.
And the younger generations.
If you're not employing staff and you're not employing people and they're not contributing, I don't know what happens. I've read things that says that AI is it will boost the economy.
Yeah.
But my brain's not big enough to understand how that happens when you're not paying into the pot.
I also think it's so unknown. Everybody's got a different view. Yeah. Where did the name GEM Underwriting come from?
I haven't got a middle name, so it's definitely not my initials. I was born and brought up in a place called Tilbury, and my mum and dad ran a sweet shop called The Gem. And I always said to my mum, if I ever do have my own business, that's what I'm going to call it.
I love it.
That's where that came from, yeah.
And what about the logo?
The logo, my youngest daughter, I've called her Rabbit from the day she was born. So, and because she's not involved in the business, and the older one is, I didn't want her to feel left out. So I tried to get a design somewhere that adds that connotation to it. Some people have said it looks like a rabbit, and other people have made other suggestions. But we'll leave that.
Right, I'm going to do something slightly different. And I'm going to ask if you wouldn't mind being interviewed by my special co-host for this episode, Isabel Myerscough. Isabel is 12. She is my daughter. She is an entrepreneur by heart. And I'm sure she's got some questions that she'd love to ask you about.
I look forward to it.
Success.
Hi.
Hi, Isabel. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I'm looking forward to this.
Same. I got some questions to ask you.
Okay.
Was it hard to start your own business?
Yeah, it was difficult because of it's the business that we write is not everybody's cup of tea. It's high hazard. When you get claims, you can get bad claims, you can get sizable claims. You've got your slip and trip type claims, which are not that expensive, but you can, when you're writing roofers and scaffolders and demolition, they tend to fall off roofs and scaffolding, and if they're seriously injured, it could cost you up to 8 figures. So it could be expensive. So you've got to hopefully, the capital provider's got to trust you as an underwriter, trust you know what you're doing. You're going to select the right business, and you're going to make sure that the business that you write is at the rates that they want it and that we want it at. So it's difficult to get the capacity. As I say, I've tried to do it since 2012, and that's how difficult it has been, because it has taken. We had 2 goes at it, and as I say, the claims were not good. I'm not going to knock the people that gave us the capital. You can understand why they refused to renew the binder. If we were in the same position as them, we would have probably made that same decision. So it is difficult. I'm very pleased that we did it and done it with the partners that we've done it with.
Yeah, okay. Have you always wanted to work for yourself?
Yes.
Easy question. How long did it take you?
The reason you think you're reasonably good at what you do, and to prove to yourself that you are, I think you have to go and work for yourself, for your own satisfaction, your own mentality. You might not be as good as you think you are, and we'll see when it does or it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So the proof of the pudding will be in the eating in 4, 5, 6, 7 years' time, when you're still working for yourself and running the business that you originally set up.
How long did it take you to start your own business?
It took from the initial conversations with Irwell, it took just over 2 years.
Just over 2 years?
Yeah, so it's a very long time. Yeah, and in all of those 2 years, you're never confident that it's going to happen. So you could have 2 years worth of conversations, and the capital provider still decides that it's not for them.
Yeah.
And then you have to start again for another 2 years.
What do you think I can do now to get experience and start learning about building my own business as a 12-year-old?
Oh, that is a difficult question, because I wasn't thinking like that at 12. It's meeting people that in the trade or the business that you want to get involved in, picking their brains.
Yeah.
Doing work experience at these places, if that's allowed. I don't know what the rules are for 12, 13, 14 years old. When I was at school, we had a thing called Trident, which you went off and chose. You chose an industry where you could go and work for 3 or 4, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks. I think it was a month at most, but you could pick, if you wanted to work in insurance, the school would find you somewhere in insurance for you to go and do a 3-4 week
What
work
did you
experience.
Pick?
It was a warehouse in Lakeside in Thurrock, but that wasn't my choice, because I didn't know at the time, and you had to go and do it. And the school said to me, "This is where you're going to go and what you're going to do." So stacking shelves, so nothing to do with insurance. But I don't know if those in a different guise, whether that still exists. But it is talking to the people in the industry you want to get involved in, and hopefully there's enough people there within some for example, like insurance. Whoever you speak to would know 25, 30, 50 people, and out of those people, there would be 1 or 2 or 3 of them that would say, "Yeah, she can come and work with us." We've had, over the years, we'd had close to 25, 30 people come and do work experience with us, who are still deciding whether they want to work in insurance or finance. So it's best to try as many different facets of what you want to do as possible.
Well, thank you for your time.
No, thank you, and very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
And I hope you're very successful in what you ever try and do.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to another enlightening episode of People in Insurance. If you enjoyed today's insights and want to stay connected with the latest industry trends, be sure to subscribe, rate and leave a review. Feel free to reach out to us on social media or through our website to share your thoughts and suggestions, or even to nominate someone whose contribution deserves to be heard. Until next time, signing off from People in Insurance.